You're probably wondering what's going to make me laugh out of Alabama. Well, pretty much everything. But us? No, we don't have to follow those rules. We're the good guys. Could be worse than being a human Cheeto. You could be a clown that does porn. And whenever they say the word realistic, take a drink, you would probably be dead by the end of the night.
If he's not pissing you off, he's not doing his job. This is the Cynical Centrist Podcast.
Welcome to the Cynical Centrist Podcast. Episode number 15, August 31st, 2019. And yet another very special Cynical Centrist podcast. I am the Cynical Centrist. I was going to talk about chicken sandwich mania. I went to go and eat a chicken sandwich at Wendy's, but we're going to have to talk about that next week because I have a very big announcement for everyone today. I have friends. I didn't realize that. If you can hear the giggles in the background there, this is one of my friends on Twitter. She's a pretty big Yang influencer, and one of my close personal friends on Twitter as well, Jessica Canaday. Welcome to the show.
Hey everyone, and thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited.
Yeah, and we've been talking now for I'd say about a couple months.
Yeah.
And we're both supporters of Andrew Yang, and we both take different approaches to that.
Yes, we do.
You're very much one of those that talk about. How about I'll let you talk about like your situation right now to the rest of the audience.
Okay. I guess I can just start at my support for Yang. I've been a UBI advocate for about 6-7 years now. I started with Zeitgeist, actually, and Peter Joseph, and then shortly after found Scott Santon's. And so I was pretty up on everything, and I saw when Yang announced. And for me, as a UBI supporter, I saw UBI, as his flagship proposal, and I was like, okay, we're doing this. We're going all the way. And I've been supporting him ever since. And actually just recently, about 6 weeks ago, my family of 6 and I lost our home, and we're now homeless and living in the woods. But I'm still, continuing support. We're here with cell service, which is amazing. And we have solar so we can get power, so I can keep advocating and doing my thing. But yeah, just taking it one day at a time, I guess. If you guys want to read more, I have my blog and everything up, and you guys can find me on Twitter at Canaday Vibes. And yeah, I love Andrew Yang and UBI.
Yeah, and for me, it was a little bit different how I met Andrew Yang. I didn't really talk about too much about how I first found out about him. I actually found out about him, I think the day after he announced his campaign.
Yeah.
And my first reaction of Andrew Yang was, well, I had two reactions. First off, I thought to myself, $1,000 a month, why just give people free money? And for about a year, I just kind of shoved it off. Until about the Joe Rogan interview. And the second thing I thought of is, oh, he's an Asian man, he'll never be elected president. and that's based on like secondhand tales that I can tell that I plan on not. I don't want to get too personal regarding the podcast. But let's just say that, my thoughts on that were actually, I'm starting to think, are a little bit misdirected. It does kind of surprise me that Andrew Yang is doing so well in the polls, especially at this point. I fully expected him to drop out at this point, actually. So, good on him.
I have totally different feelings. My best friend is Asian. And she's amazing. But she doesn't, and she's very attractive too. So, she doesn't really get a lot of like Asian hate, I guess. I don't really hear many stories from her. And other Asian friends that I have, I do hear some here and there from them. And it blows my mind, honestly, because I love Asians. I love anime, and manga. And I'm just on this thing like, Asians are so smart and creative and beautiful. Like, why don't we love Asians? So it blows my mind. But I totally knew from when he announced, I was like, oh, we're going to win. Like, there are way too many poor people in this country. There's no way they're going to let $1,000 a month slip through their fingers. We have to win.
Yeah, and I do think that, and for me, what made Andrew Yang the biggest candidate for me, the best candidate for me anyway, actually, believe it or not, was not UBI. It was when I found out about what human-centered capitalism is. And that's one of his other big three plans.
And it's great.
Yeah, and human-centered capitalism, for those of you that are, I mentioned this on episode 5 of my podcast, but I'll repeat here. Human-centered capitalism, the idea of not just basing everything on money, focusing more on humans rather than profit. Now, obviously, profit is still a factor, but it is not the be-all, end-all in this new idea of capitalism. And to me, I really think that would, if you install, I call it install like we're robots, but install that way of thinking to people, then what you will have is people focusing more on quality of life rather than just the almighty dollar. We're not looking to get rich. We're looking to just have enough money to live on. And there's studies that show once you reach about $75,000 a year, your happiness has diminishing returns with each extra dollar that you have. So we're all just looking to get to that point so that we can start focusing on each other and ourselves.
Exactly. Yeah, I love this policy. I grew up wealthy, so I guess I have kind of like a riches to rags story here. But I was growing up, money was just thrown at me. I had no value for money. I still don't, but it's in a different, perspective than that now. But, when I was a kid, I didn't think about it. No one was stressing about bills. And I honestly, everyone on the earth, I value them just for existing and having the thoughts that they have. And I think that humans want to pursue work and want to do good things. And those things don't necessarily always have to be in a monetary value to someone else, which I think this policy really highlights. And I just absolutely adore it. It's amazing.
Right. So anyways, for those of you that want to know more about Jessica Canaday, you can go check out her blog. I actually was going to say the URL for it, but I forgot it. I'm very sorry about that last minute. Could you go ahead and say it?
Okay. It's actually, it's fine because I actually don't even have a paid site or a paid domain right now. I still have the free site. So it is a mouthful, but it's canadayvibes.wixsite.com/vibe. Eventually I will get canadayvibes.com, but it's not happening yet.
Well, for those of you that want to go check out her blog, and please do donate to her Patreon as well. Another thing I forgot to mention here was that I'm going to make this episode, so this episode is going to be a little bit rougher around the edges than my other ones, because the other ones I heavily edited, and this one I am planning on making it about as unedited as possible. So if you hear me doing a lot of ums and uhs and that you normally don't see, part of that is because I haven't really edited this very much at all, which I'm pretty sure works great for you, Jessica, because you're quite the orator. I've seen you in another podcast, I think Broke Vote podcast, I believe.
Yeah, it was the Broke Folk Vote. Do not say that 3 times fast. It's a mouthful.
Broke Folk Vote.
Yeah. But yeah, that was with Grassroots Yang Gang. They're amazing, and I had such a blast with that. So, but yeah, I do try and keep my ums and buts to a minimum, and really just try and focus on fluidity. So I can't even say that word, but
I try to as well. But sometimes my mind races at 100 miles an hour, and with the topic that we're going to talk about today, you'll see exactly what I mean.
Yeah. I'm probably going to be the same because I'm really passionate about this topic, and I'm probably going to have some ums and buts in there.
Yeah, and while we're at it now, we're already 10 minutes in, almost 10 minutes in anyway. So Bernie Sanders. Now, I've mentioned Bernie Sanders is in my top 5, and I have a lot of respect for the man. I think his heart's in the right place.
Yeah.
And if it comes down to Bernie Sanders versus Donald Trump, I will not hesitate to vote for Bernie Sanders.
Of course, yeah, me either.
And I am hoping most of my listeners are the same way. I know there's a few Yang, if not Yang, then I'll vote for Trump, But look, I'm at that point, healthcare is the biggest concern for me, so I have to vote blue in 2020, no matter who it is. But
Right.
there's a lot about Bernie's policies, a lot about especially his plans to deal with automation, like he recognizes automation unlike a lot of other candidates, but the
Right.
way that he wants to go about it, well, at least it ain't Delaney and just thinking about a robot tax, but he wants to implement what he calls a federal job guarantee. And what this means is, with a federal job guarantee, you would be paid a certain amount, and you're basically guaranteed a job by the government. If you can't find a job elsewhere because your job's been taken away due to automation, then your job will go to, my bad. See, this is what I'm talking about. Your job will be whatever the government gives you, basically. So it
Right,
would be a
yeah.
guarantee by the government.
Yeah.
Now, this plan, on the short term, it sounds good to me. Because what you got is you're able to replace certain jobs with jobs from the government. And over time, you'll have these people kind of have replacement jobs.
Right.
Here's the problem. And maybe you can kind of also help me analyze this as well, Jessica.
Yeah.
My issue with the federal job guarantee is the long term. Now, we're not just talking about in 5 years when in Las Vegas, blackjack dealers are going to lose all their jobs due to auto dealers because they finally perfected the algorithms there, or even truck drivers. I'm talking the end game for automation is at least half of all current jobs will be taken by a robot of some sort.
Right. Yeah.
That is somewhere in the vicinity of about 70 to 80 million jobs.
That's a lot of jobs.
Can
That's a
you
lot of jobs.
Right. Can you see, can you see the government replace 70 to 80 million jobs?
I do not see that happening personally. I think that is just a vast overestimate of, our productivity. My husband and I were actually just discussing this. A lot of the jobs that we do now, how much time do we spend just doing busy work and looking like we're busy, at work now, when we're trying to, employ all these people in America. What are we going to do? Dig ditches with a spoon is a popular one that I like to use. Might be a little trolly, but I really see it just being a massive amount of busy work and further drudgery, which to me sets us back instead of moves us forward.
You know what this reminds me of now? You just made me think about this. What this reminds me of is there was this book I read as a kid. It's called The Phantom Toll Booth.
Oh my gosh, I love that one. Oh my gosh.
Do you remember the first demon that they saw when they got up to the mountains was a demon known as the Terrible Trivium?
Yes.
And the first thing that he had them do, he gave one person, I forgot who it was. Like I said, it's been a long time. It's been a good 15 years. He gave one, yeah, he gave one person some tweezers. That's what it is, tweezers, and told them to go to this huge pile of sand and take out 1 grain of sand with tweezers and put it in with the next pile and put it into another pile and to continue doing that. He then gave another, I think the dog or something, a eyedropper. Told him to go to a well and fill up the eyedropper with water and put it into an empty well. I think it was an empty well anyway.
Yeah, I think it was empty. Yes.
This
and
is
just do that and fill the well.
this is kind of the types of jobs I'm thinking to myself, like, obviously federal job guarantee is not going to be this inefficient. But when you're looking at, I'm just giving an example here. Let's say that you have them work in construction, right? Mm-hmm. And you shovel, and you're gonna have them just shovel, like their job is gonna be shoveling all day or something. Why can't you just have a robot by a corporation construct these projects for you with these tractors? You can have driverless tractors and driverless like diggers, and you can just dig up these things at a rate way more, hundreds of times more efficiently than a human can do.
Oh, of course.
So
I don't.
And at $15 an hour. Remember that.
Right.
This is $30,000 a year. So the value of that person, basically you're paying them $30,000 to do something for a fraction of the efficiency that you could have some $30,000 tractor do with just a little bit of maintenance.
Right, exactly. Yeah, I think it's pretty much the definition of busy work. I mean, we are going to have technology that is going to push us forward and be able to automate these tasks. You know, any repetitive task that we do at work is going to be able to be automated. And I guess a lot of people, I feel they get scared or angry about that. You know, robots are taking my job. But that also, it frees up so much time for us, you know, to do other things, to pursue, you know, creativity, to pursue, you know, whatever we want to do, pursue family time, really get back to living well and thriving and being happy. I don't, you know, I talk to so many people about their jobs. I don't know a single one of them that actually truly enjoys their work, which is a big deal to me, because I obviously want humans to be happy and be able to do what they want. And I don't think saying that just because it's not a federal job or like a wage slave job, that it means any less, personally.
Right. And actually kind of adding on to what you're saying as well. We humans strive for efficiency.
Yeah.
And with efficiency, and with that efficiency, obviously, robots are going to be more efficient than humans. That's just a fact of life.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, definitely.
That's how it's going to happen. And not only are they more efficient in jobs that are like more mechanical in nature, or even high-skilled jobs like programming, but I've even seen like documentaries that talk about like every job could eventually be taken by a robot of some sort, that a robot could do it more efficiently. You know Vocaloid?
I do not.
Okay, Vocaloid is, this was created by Japan. They created artificial voices. And one of the hottest names that came out of Vocaloid is this fictional anime character named Hatsune Miku.
Okay.
She's so big, they do concerts for her. Everything.
Okay.
And
I think I've heard that name.
yeah, one of her big draws, one of Hatsune Miku's big draws, is her being able to sing in tones that no human being can actually sing. A good example of it, if you ever go on YouTube, look up Hatsune Miku Melt, and that is a big example. So I mean, robots. So yeah, we'll be competing with robots for these types of jobs as well. Not just the mechanical types, but those other types of jobs as well. So to me, eventually the end game is looking like not just 50 to 60% of jobs, but every job will be taken by a robot. That means that you're going to have some kind of you're going to need some kind of compensation for people if they're going to live on. And a federal job guarantee is not going to do that because that's inefficient. So UBI, and making UBI a living wage, not just $1,000 a month, I'm saying a living wage, is inevitable.
Right. Yeah. I see that happening too.
Yeah, and to me, this is just kind of introducing people to that idea.
Right. Yeah, it is. We're pretty, I mean, automation has been happening for a while now. You know, when we go to the self-checkout, that's automation.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, it's been happening, but we're just now getting to the brink where it's become more of a mainstream topic. And I don't think people realize how efficient robots and AI will become very quickly. I know that I try to talk to, my family about automation, and they kind of laugh about it, some of them,
Right.
and they're like, oh, robots, but it's a real reality that we're living with. And I agree with you. I see us just having all robots, AI eventually. And I even have discussed before where like human arts will be like a niche, and it'll be like, hey, it's a human painting, instead of a robot painting.
Right.
And that'll kind of be, where we go from there. But yeah, I mean, UBI is what is going to take us into that future. A federal jobs guarantee is not. I mean, it is actually. It will, I think, be kind of like an accelerationist, concept, because I feel like a federal jobs guarantee will make employers, heavily automate even faster, because they realize that it's more cost effective to automate, and they are there for profit, not humans. So that's just where I see all of that going.
Right. And I don't know if it's the federal job guarantee that is going to like accelerate automation. Actually, if anything, that might actually slow down automate. I will admit, I think that will actually slow down the automation thing a little bit, because more people can take these jobs in government. But but Sanders' other big economic plan, which is increasing the minimum wage to $15 an hour, and I get it. I totally get raising. I'm actually for raising the minimum wage to a particular point.
Right.
But $15 an hour. I mean, I live in a state where the minimum wage is $7.25 an hour. Could you imagine?
Oh my gosh.
Yeah,
Wow.
could you imagine what it would be like if you
Wow.
increase it to 15 an hour here
Right.
within a 4-year period?
That's double.
Right, it'd be double over a 4-year period. You want to talk about hyperinflation? I mean,
Right.
72 rule that says that's an 18% increase year by year on wages. That's insane.
That is insane.
And here's the thing. Who is going to suffer the most out of these $15 an hour minimum wage?
It's, I mean, average people.
No, actually, average people do benefit, like those that actually get jobs.
Well, I think, look, I say average people because I just see, of course, I'm a UBI advocate, so I'm going to have to throw this in there, but the drudgery, and even though you're making $15 an hour, there's people now who are making $15 an hour and they still cannot pay their bills. So that's why I say this is going to hit average people who are trying to make ends meet as well. But and another side of that, I think you're going to say, is small businesses.
Yeah, I actually was going to talk about that. Yep. Yeah, that was actually the thing I was going to propose here. So, small businesses. Let me explain. I'm Amazon. I'm the CEO of Amazon. I'm Jeff Bezos. I'm already giving my lowest employees a good $10, $11 an hour. And if they're up in Seattle, they're already getting $15 an hour.
Right.
Because I can afford it. I'm worth billions of dollars.
Right.
A $15 an hour minimum wage is going to mean nothing to me. Absolutely nothing. That's what? A few million? Okay, fine. Give it to the guys. Fine. I'll cut their hours or something if I really want to increase those profits.
Right.
But in contrast, Mom and Pop's Donuts, they want to hire a high school student for the summer. Right? Or not a high school student. I'm sorry. I got to go with over 18. So some college student over the summer. So that way they can pay for tuition. As it is right now, at $7.25 an hour, I can hire one person. And that's what, $14,000 a year.
Right.
At $15 an hour, we're now talking $31,000 a year.
Yeah, that's a big difference, especially to a small business.
Yeah, that's 17. That means that person needs to make more than twice as much profit for my business for it to be feasible for me to hire that person.
Right.
Now, let me create another situation for you. I keep it at $7.25 an hour, but this college kid is over 18, and UBI gives him $1,000 a month. It transfers the burden of that wage increase from the small business to the government.
Right.
It's
which they
not
can obviously handle it.
right, which the government can handle. I mean, they are. What's our budget like? $10 trillion or something. I'm pretty sure I butchered that, but I know it's somewhere in the trillions.
It
I
is,
mean, our
yeah.
defense budget alone is $1 trillion. So
Right. Yeah, I mean, UBI with, minimum wage, I mean, I'm totally for that. That's fantastic. If we want to go that route, or just leave minimum wage alone completely and give them UBI. And then, you get people into these small business environments who actually want to be there and want to help grow the business and do, their best work there. And I think you just promote an overall better work ethic, better work environment, because, necessarily those people don't have to have that job. And then you guarantee that they actually want to be there and want that job.
right. And there's other things, and I know a lot of people who are going to listen to this and think to themselves, oh, how libertarian of you. Oh, how conservative of you. I'm not thinking in terms of libertarian or conservative here. I'm just thinking in terms of economics. I'm
Right.
thinking to myself, like, yeah, I mean, and here's the thing. I think UBI is Andrew Yang's weakest of his big three policies. But if you put it up against Bernie Sanders' federal job guarantee, which one is going to help the entire economy as a whole more? Well, let's see. UBI helps keeps the burden away from small businesses, and also paying it partially through a VAT tax, which will be passed down to people, but the VAT tax will not offset enough of the UBI, so they still come out on top, unless you're like buying a private jet or something, which,
Right.
like, if you're buying a private jet, you deserve to pay more, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So
Or Jeff Bezos, buying rockets, to blow into space.
one person I was thinking of in particular when I'm thinking private jets is a TV evangelist, Kenneth Copeland, who had been talking about wanting another. No, Jesse Duplantis. That's what it was. Jesse Duplantis had said that he wanted to raise up money for a private jet, and he wanted to raise up like $60 million by his church so that he can get a private jet so he can go out around the world and all this.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah. So Jesse Duplantis. Yeah. So that's what I mean.
Yeah.
He's gonna have to pay an extra 10% on top of it.
Right, and he should.
Right. Exactly. So I mean. If you're talking about who benefits more from UBI versus federal job guarantee, with federal job guarantee, you're talking $15 an hour minimum wage, which will definitely cause inflation. And compare that to UBI, which the only inflation we're going to be looking at is a VAT tax.
Right, exactly.
So, yeah, that's pretty much my case regarding UBI over the federal job guarantee. What's your thoughts?
You know what? Oh my gosh, I could probably go off on a million different tangents about this, but one of my biggest things is that the Bernie supporters, they want to talk about how the federal jobs guarantee, is better because you can still keep your state-assisted benefits and everything like that. And they want to talk about how Andrew Yang wants to cut those benefits and give you UBI instead and not stack it. And he actually did amend his policy, to include like disability and Social Security, which I think is fantastic. But I think people don't realize that there are a lot of people here who don't want to work, or they cannot work, or they, want to do other things that aren't a specific job. They want to be creative or travel the country and be a travel blogger.
Right.
And UBI really facilitates that, and it opens up all kinds of different human possibilities for how we define work. And
we will need to redefine work. That's
Right.
what people have to realize. We need to eventually redefine work as automation takes away more of these jobs. The jobs that they will be taking away last will be those social jobs that you talk about, like blogging or YouTubing. I was reading an article a couple years ago talking about that gaming was going to become the only job available.
Yeah.
in about 40, 50 years. So.
Right. Yeah, and it's just a mess. And I think what a lot of people don't also realize is that, if you have a federal job, guarantee at $15 an hour, you are not even going to qualify for state benefits. So I don't really know what the big deal is, about keeping said benefits. You would have to have, like a 5 or 6 person family and only have, one federal job in the family to qualify for benefits. So it will help those larger families probably, but for the majority of people, they're going to get cut off those benefits anyway.
I think though Sanders' plan was, he was planning to expand those benefits. He was wanting to offer like free housing to the homeless and other stuff like that. So he had other plans that were out there.
Right.
So he probably wants to expand that a little bit. But
Right.
I mean, $15 an hour is meant to be, his entire point is that you're not supposed to get those benefits. That the
Right.
minimum wage should be theoretically a living wage. So if it's a living wage, why would you need those benefits?
Right. I mean, and if you're a 2-person family, okay, you're making $30 an hour. I think that's a good, reasonable living wage. But if you're a single mom, and you have a kid or a couple kids, that $15 an hour minimum wage, I mean, it will help you, probably if you're making minimum wage right now. But I think it'll still be kind of this, a juggling bill, kind of situation. And month to month, you're trying to still meet your needs and meet your bills with this job, which also, there's daycare. And I know that Bernie wants to do something with like daycare and everything like that. But we're also taking these moms, away from their kids for more hours. Instead, when we could give them UBI, they could work less hours and spend more time with their kids.
Yeah, and I think that was actually one of his strongest arguments for UBI, was placing the value of one of the hardest jobs in the world, and that is parenting.
Right.
Being a stay-at-home mother. And I mean, that that makes a lot of sense. It's like, as it stands right now in society, the monetary value that we put into parenting is zero.
Yeah, exactly.
And with UBI, we actually put a monetary value into parenting, which, to me, this is one of the strongest arguments for UBI. And this is for something that I believe that, and don't get me wrong, I don't think I'm a little bit different than you. I don't find UBI as a be-all, end-all solution. And I don't think that, I actually think that it is his weakest of his 3 flagship proposals. At least it's the one that people can poke the most holes in. But if you want to talk like arguments regarding like Andrew Yang's best arguments for it, this should be just screaming from the mountaintops. Like,
oh yeah,
like especially to women, which I'm actually surprised Andrew Yang is a little bit weak on white women voting. Actually, he has that's where his weakest demographic is white women. Right.
Yeah, it confuses me because I honestly see the freedom dividend as benefiting women the most.
Right.
So yeah, it's kind of weird to me that more women are not attaching themselves with that. And it does. It takes so much work to raise a child. And I see the arguments online where people are saying, well, why should anyone have to pay you to raise your kids? But it's not about that. It's not that we're getting paid to raise our kids. We're getting paid so that we can. And I think that's a really important distinction to make with that.
Right. So going back to the federal job guarantee, one thing that I have issues with the federal job guarantee is that it does not really talk about that argument. Like, the value of parenting is still zero. Whereas with the federal job guarantee, you have to still work a job while you're parenting a child. And for $15 an hour, or actually I heard this one YouTube video from a guy who has a channel called The Humanist Report. And he was talking about, having cushy jobs with the government, a guaranteed cushy job with the government that pays $70,000 to $80,000 a year. And my $70,000 to $80,000. Okay, I worked for the government once as a software engineer. I know I don't like getting personal, but I gotta talk about this. I worked as a software engineer, and my starting salary was $65,000 a year. Okay,
Right. Yeah.
70,
Yeah, exactly.
$80,000 a year. Is this going to be like the new minimum wage or something? Is this what he's eventually thinking the minimum wage is going to become? Because if everybody gets paid $70,000 to $80,000 a year, I just got I'm going to say 4 words for you. Hello, $60 Big Macs.
Yeah, seriously, that's a ridiculous number to me, for minimum wage. I mean, and I love how we both started laughing when you said that.
I couldn't have. Well, I first heard about that actually from another YouTube channel, another Yang supporter, and one of the bigger influencers, Paget Kagi, I think. Did I pronounce that right? Paget Kagi?
I'm not sure. I don't know if it's Paget or if it's Paget. I'm not really sure, but yes, I know exactly who you're talking about. She's awesome.
Yeah, and she had, and I found that out from as a response, $70,000 to $80,000 a year, and I just put it down on a comment. You'd be talking $60 Big Macs if everyone is getting paid $70,000 to $80,000 a year, and even if you kept the minimum wage of $15 an hour. $70,000 to $80,000 a year for the government jobs, everyone's going to want to flock to get a free government job then. Corporations would die overnight.
Right, exactly. Yeah, I mean, that's a lot of money. And I mean, we're going to obviously have to print that, and fuel that back into our economy, which, yeah, of course, is going to be just massive inflation.
Right, and that's the one thing I wanted to mention regarding UBI, too, is that and this is going to be the last thing I'll talk about here on the show. And that is Andrew Yang talks about how he's going to pay for everything. We don't have to print a single dollar in order to make UBI happen, at least his UBI plan.
Right.
And that's really important because people talk about, wouldn't this cause hyperinflation? Hyperinflation is normally caused by printing too much money. In this case, not a single dollar is being printed. You're getting it all through a series of taxes, primarily by the VAT and a climate change tax, but a bunch of taxes and economic growths.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I honestly feel that, hypothetically, Andrew Yang wins in 2020, and then 2021, we all start getting our UBI checks. I feel like we are going to have to print money to begin with, because, we haven't been taxing to that. So those funds, or carbon tax or anything like that. So those funds are going to have to come from somewhere initially. However, the taxes that he proposes, that's what taxes are for. They're to offset inflation. So I feel like it'll all balance out, and we'll all be, of course, better off. But I do feel like we will have to print something, at first.
No, I get it. And on the short term, and you mentioned too, why are Yang supporters so confident that they'd be able to get those checks in 2021? And one thing I talked about on Twitter is a matter of having to appease to the what will likely be in 2020 a Republican Senate. I have talked about, and I will talk about this more next week too. I'll be talking about the Senate races, but just a little bit of a sneak peek for you guys. The predictions right now have the Democrats at best gaining 1 seat. Just 1.
Wow.
So that leaves a 52-48 Republican advantage going into 2021. Now, say hypothetically Bernie Sanders wins the nomination, becomes president, and then he wants to start implementing the federal job guarantee. Even if he tries to do this by executive order, which he cannot, he still has to go through Congress, but let's just say hypothetically he can. It can be stopped by Congress or a conservative Supreme Court who already reject his ideas because they see it as socialist or they don't see it as economically feasible.
Right.
Now, on the flip side, with a 52-48, it's only 2 Republicans you just got to convince. And now you got Andrew Yang here. You have independents and conservatives who are actually, at the very least, open to the idea.
Right.
I mean, you have the Libertarian Party talking about their fair tax plan, which, by the way, I will give a disclaimer, I do not support the fair tax. However, I do find this interesting, that within the fair tax, they have a prebate plan of about $300 a month. So they kind of have a pseudo-UBI plan, kind of fixed into their fair tax plan.
Right. Yeah, they do.
So conservatives and libertarians, they may not completely agree with the idea, but they're at least open to the idea of a UBI to a point that you could theoretically see, if nothing else, him passing UBI, maybe by the slimmest of margins, but you could get him to you could get 2 or 3 Republicans on board with this idea.
Oh yeah, I honestly, I've seen this argument as well, and it does not worry me at all. Bernie, he spent a lot of his career, yelling and pointing his finger at people, and I think that creates a lot of division. And just Andrew Yang is taking a different approach, and he does appeal to all kinds of different political backgrounds, educational backgrounds, different minorities, and I think, just our whole Humanity First slogan is really going to pull everyone together. And he is so reasonable, it's not like he's up there spouting ideologies. He has math, he's looked at the numbers and he's producing real solutions. And I think people really like that about him. And, even if you're a Republican and you think, oh, he's this Democrat, you're still, how can you be, just outright blatantly against him when he's so accepting of everyone?
Remember, I mentioned on the last episode, my own family, lifelong Republicans.
Yes.
40,
Yeah.
I told you were the first one that I told this. 40-year-long Republicans, Christian evangelicals until about 2 years ago, are backing a Democrat for the first time in their lives. And that Democrat happens to be Andrew Yang for that very reason.
Yeah, and I hear so many of those stories, and I think that's such a powerful thing that these people who have been so dead set on their own ideologies and their own party are now making the switch to support him. I think that's just huge. And I've looked at that map. Have you seen that map where it's, it shows Andrew Yang's support for like all the different zip codes? And it's literally the entire U.S. He has supporters in like every zip code.
Yeah.
So I just thought that was pretty cool too.
Yeah, that's actually, and that can be a blessing, but also in a primary that can be sort of a curse, because you need to have 15%. You have 15% of a particular district in order to get delegates from that district. So
Right, yeah.
at the same time, it's great that he has such broad appeal. But one of the big problems is that he's not going to be able to get delegates that way unless he manages to get 15% in a district. Now, I'll give you an example. Amy Klobuchar is much lower in the rankings right now than he is. I think she's polling maybe 1%. But in the state of Minnesota, she currently has 18% of the vote. That means she would actually qualify to get some delegates from the state of Minnesota, and Andrew Yang would not, even though Yang is getting polling at about 3 times the amount of voters that she is.
Right. Yeah, I think it's important, obviously, that he gets enough support and gets enough percentage. I also think that we're early enough in the race where people are just learning about him still. And of course we see it, on Twitter. We see the new notifications pop up like, hey, I'm Yang Yang now, I just found Andrew Yang. I think that will continue. And I think we're just slowly and steadily building that wave that he talks about that's going to overtake the White House. And I look at it from a poor person's perspective,
Right.
There are so many people that are struggling. Our own gang members are struggling, just so many people. And I think that's going to be a lot more meaningful to them. Like, hey, this guy knows we're struggling. He wants to help us. And you change things, not keep it just the same old establishment. So I think that is going to be a huge deal for us, too.
Yeah, and I think that with people like you, I'm pretty sure that he's going to get noticed a lot more. So
yeah, that's it's weird because I'm actually pretty introverted, and I hate putting my face on YouTube and everything like that. But
I don't show my face at all, so I totally get it.
Yeah, exactly. And I kind of just try and stay under the radar. But with everything that's going on, I'm like, I need to bring this into the light because I talk to people all day long who are going through the same things or have been in the same situation. And we don't talk about it enough about how our economy is actually doing for humans.
Right.
So that's just my desire to, push all this out there. And it's actually been really humbling and scary for me, to push this out there. But we do need to talk about it more. And we need to realize that his policies are going to better human lives. And that's at least my entire goal.
Right. So that's pretty much it for for this segment. I do want to thank you for being here, Jessica.
Thank you so much for having me. I had so much fun.
Yeah, and she's going to be on more, by the way. I plan on making this kind of a semi-regular thing. So she will be on again within the next month or two. But for now, I mean, I've already at the 45-minute mark, so I'm going to just give a special thanks to audionautics.com. You can go check that out, get your opening themes over there, and also my good friend Pulsar over at Pulsar Radio, radiovegas.rocks. And that's pretty much it for this show. Got anything to say before we go off the air?
I don't think so. Just everyone, look into Andrew Yang, look into Bernie, make a reasonable, decision about things, and just be open-minded. And thank you again for having me.
No problem. And yeah, I won't be talking about Andrew Yang as much next week. Sorry for those of you that constantly think that I just keep throwing out Andrew Yang stuff all the time. We'll be back to our regularly scheduled programming next week. Until then, I will see you all later. And remember, if I'm not pissing you off, I'm not doing my job. Now to go piss some people off. Bye, everybody.
Bye.